A lot of the Artemis album was inspired very much so by the comic book story, and I would think of events in the comic book and then try to write music. So the music video of Till the Light Goes Out is us like preparing for battle, and Nyx, the goddess of the night, is coming to very, very dramatic. She's coming to take over our village, and so that's what I specifically wrote it for. I was like, I want this to sound like they are prepping for battle, and that's why you hear that chanting in there, because I was like, I want this to be as if they have a spiritual ritual that they're doing before they go into battle, where they're like, they're prepped physically and they're prepping spiritually to go fight this goddess of the night. So that's where that song came from.
It's a beautiful song. I love
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes.
What's your favorite song to play so far?
Play so far. I don't know. It's really hard to pick a favorite, but I would say in this particular show, I love playing. Spoiler alert, we're gonna play the show. I love playing Love Goes On and On. That one is pretty epic. I feel Amy Lee behind me, singing. I feel powerful. Yeah.
So we've seen a lot of covers. What was special about Phantom of the Opera that made them want to be like your first big cover?
That's probably, it's up there. That's one of my favorite, ties for my top favorite cover I've ever done was Phantom of the Opera. And I don't know, I just grew up listening to that music. My dad had the album of the original cast of Phantom of the Opera's, performance, and so we would listen to it a lot, and I just grew up loving that music. Yeah.
What inspired you to do the hair swinging while you played the violin?
The hair hanging?
Yeah.
The hair hanging. That was not one of my brightest moves ever, I would say. I went to a Cirque du Soleil show probably about 3 years ago, and I went, I loved it, and you're not supposed to leave a Cirque du Soleil show saying, I'm gonna do that. You're supposed to say, wow, they're circus performers, they're incredible, I'm gonna leave that at the circus. But no, I left being like, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, I have to learn how to do that someday. So here comes, COVID, all my tours are canceled, life shut down. I was trying to plan a Christmas special, and I just wanted it to have something in it, or a few things in it, that were spectacular. And I was like, it's really hard to make a digital show feel spectacular. And I thought, hair hanging, that's it. So I can't even tell you, I searched all over the internet, found hair hanging teachers, flew them to LA. They taught me how to do the hair and everything. I had already booked them to be there for, I think, 5 days to teach me train me for 5 days. And after the first moment when I clicked into the little ring and I put my weight on my, on my head, even slightly, I just bent my knees. And I just looked at them and I said, oh my gosh, this really hurts. And they're like, yeah, you're hanging by your hair. Of course it hurts. And so I sometimes joke that, actually it's not a joke at all, but the only reason I didn't quit right then and there is because I was too embarrassed not to show up the next day. Here these coaches were, I had to talk them into doing it. I had to talk, really coax them into being like, please teach me, I can do it. And then I was too embarrassed after all of that and flying them to LA to not show up for my next practice. And so I was like, okay, my new goal, make it through tomorrow. And that's what it became. It was literally it went from, I want to do that on stage and tour with this, to just make it through tomorrow. And I ended up being able to film it in the Christmas special, and that was the final, that's where the goal stopped. I filmed it in the Christmas special, and I was like, heavens to Murgatroyd, never again. But I'll always be very proud of that experience. It was the hardest mental and physical thing I've ever done. And so, as check, bucket list, did it. Yeah.
If you could collaborate with anybody, who would be your fantasy? And then if anybody who's passed on, who would be your all-time hero to collaborate with?
Ooh. I would love to collaborate with Pink. That'd probably be my number one. She is just so cool. Only for the fact if it just meant that we got to be friends, I would want to collaborate with Pink. She's so cool. And then from past, I just watched the Queen movie, Bohemian Rhapsody. So good! If you haven't seen it, I was way late to the game for watching it, but I think he's one of the best writers of all time, so might be Queen. Yeah. Burnout. How do I deal with burnout? I know I've gotten it before. I would say switching it up. You know, I definitely get burnt out, but I feel like if I get burnt out in writing, it's like almost a very different muscle in my brain to then go towards, okay, well, I'm gonna work on a music video. And that's why I kind of like the artist cycle of like, you know, it's like you write an album, you make a bunch of videos, you go on tour, you kind of make some videos, you go on tour, then you write an album, then you make a bunch of videos, then you go, like it's this cycle that kind of keeps, I never get too burnt out in one area, and if I do start to get burnt out, I'm like, it's just a little bit longer till I get, you know, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel for like my next. And sometimes I really do have to completely switch it up and be like, you know, like I've written several things like that probably will never come out, but it was another exercise of creativity that got me out of the burnout I was experiencing over there. Yes. Sorry, I can't hear you. Of all my studio work, what gives me the most satisfaction? So like of all my songs I've ever done? Yeah, I mean, I'm I'm pretty proud of my first album. There's something about that album that is pretty magical because I had no idea what I was doing. I knew nothing about songwriting. I didn't know where to find a producer. It's one of those things where it's like, I just kind of started, and as I would like take the step, the like, you know, the little stepping stone would appear as I was about to step on it. And I still am kind of blown away. Now, if I'm writing an album, I'll write like 40 songs, and you pick your favorites, and you make an album out of it, you know, or 50 songs. You write a ton to try to get those few. My first album, that's made up of the first 12 songs I ever wrote. I wrote 12 songs. And that's the album. And they were the first ones I'd ever done. So it's kind of crazy to me that that album worked. And, you know, I don't know. Album is kind of a little magical creature to me. Yes. You know, I've always liked arranging, and I don't think I even realized it when I was younger that I was arranging and I was becoming an arranger, because I remember if ever I was asked to play in church, for example, like I didn't want to just play exactly what was in the hymn book. I thought, oh, I know those melodies. I'm gonna, you know, make my own version of it. And I would make like a Lindsey-ified version of it, you know, play in church. And I started doing that when I played with some of my friends in bands. I would say, okay, well that's their melodies. Like, okay, what can I do to like weave into it? So I kind of started by just adding to other people's arts or arranging songs I already knew. And that, the same skills that were needed for that were actually quite similar to the same skills that you use when you write original music. So that was, I think, that what made it kind of a natural segue was, oh, I've already kind of been doing this? Okay. And I just taught a course all about it. So, you know, it was a lot of fun actually to like break it down and teach. I'm sure there's probably a link on my website, I don't know. But anyways, I taught a course and it was a lot of fun to break down my songwriting and my arranging process and how I learned it. Let's see. Yes.
What inspired you to make your comic?
I was actually inspired to make a comic book. I actually wanted to do one for a while, and I had thought I had the right story, and then I stopped writing it because the story didn't feel right. So it was always kind of in the back pocket of like, someday I'll make a comic book, you know, I want to tell a story like that. And then when I was writing the Artemis album, it all started out by being inspired by like the moon and the phases of the moon, and how that's a really cool symbol to me of like mental health, and how we all kind of go through phases of life, and sometimes we get covered up by shadows, sometimes we're bright, and just because you're going through a time of shadow doesn't mean that you're not still there. It doesn't mean you've lost a piece of yourself, and it's just kind of like the moon. Like, we may not be able to see it, but it's always there, and it will come back to its full light. And I just love that concept, and from that, I decided to call the album Artemis, based on the goddess of the moon. And also, I was looking for a new way to write, because I was feeling kind of burnt out. And writing from a comic book and a story standpoint made, you know, this album feel different enough, and like just enough of a tweak that it felt like a new experience and allowed me to write new sounding music when I had been kind of stuck previously. So that's kind of, it all just kind of happened, and before I knew it, I had this really fun story and was like, this is my comic book. This is it. Oh, yes. You know, I actually decided that when I was going to college. Again, I was burnt out. I was about to study classical music to be a performance major, and I just realized that I didn't like the violin anymore. And that made me really sad because I was always it was such a huge part of my identity. I'm Lindsey, I play the violin. That's my thing. And realizing it was like, where did my passion go? I lost it along the way. And so I decided not to major in music, but I didn't want to quit. So I just started having fun with it. And I was like, I'm only allowed to play for fun right now. And I would jam with bands, I would play to my favorite songs that I heard on the radio, whatever, and I really got into dubstep at that time. And so I started to just play along with dubstep and electronic music, and that's what I enjoyed the most. And that's kind of how I found my sound, was just by making it fun again, because I needed it. I needed it to just be that. So, yes?
What was your, early on you did a lot of covers on video stuff. What was your favorite cosplay with the video game?
Favorite cosplay with the video games? Ooh. I mean, the Zelda one is always pretty special to me. You know, I played the game as a kid, and just getting to wear the little elf, or not elf ears, sorry, but the little elf ears are what they were, and do that. I remember we filmed it over 3 different seasons. So it was a labor of love. We filmed it in the summer, we filmed it in the fall once the leaves turned colors, and we filmed it in the winter so we could get the snow. So it was just a very thought out process. I remember when I finally got to release it, it was like, yes, it was like Christmas. How are we doing? Oh, okay, good. They're usually trying to rush me off the stage. Yes. How do I plan on spending my birthday? Actually, I am taking my roommate to the John Legend concert. She was like, oh, Lindsey, please, can we go? We're managed by the same manager. So I was like, I know a gal that can get us in. So I'm taking my roommate to the John Legend concert, which I'm very excited about. Yes. Oh, I love costumes. That's a tough choice. I think on the Evanescence tour, I started in this it was almost like a conductor coat, and it had coattails and everything, and it's actually the same costume from Dancing with the Stars that I did my finale in, and so that costume just had special memories in it because of that experience, and I ended up buying it from Dancing with the Stars. Yes, I had to buy my costumes from them, but so that will probably always be one of my favorite costumes off Dancing with the Stars. Yes? What kind of shenanigans do we what? Like on tour?
Sure.
Oh man, what kind of shenanigans? We love shenanigans on tour. I'm trying to think, what were some of our latest shenanigans? Oh yeah, we like to do Nerf gun wars, where we just attack each other with Nerf guns. That's a great one. They're in our wardrobe cases, and so sometimes they'll just fall out and people are a little confused. There was this, I got gifted this marionette puppet of myself in Europe one time, and as cool as it was very scary looking. It was terrifying. And so, yeah, they always are. And so we took this marionette for an entire tour. It would end up in people's work boxes, it would end up in people's bunks, it would end up in dark corners, where you'd come around, you're like, oh my gosh, and it was the little Lindsey doll. So, we love doing stuff like that. We have a lot of fun on tour, and a lot of us have toured together from anywhere from 3 to 9 years. So we're all pretty close, and we like to have a good time. Oh, my favorite, Bread's Up. I don't know why this started, but it was me and one of the other gals on tour years ago. I had this huge loaf of bread in my room. It was like a saucer, and it was enormous. And so we we decided we would take it and we were going to throw it at people on stage while they were setting up. And instead of yelling heads up, we'd yell breads up as it flew towards them. And so to this day, in Europe, we always get baskets full of bread. And so me and the dancers usually will take it and we put it in our dressing rooms. And then after the show, we plan a big breads up battle, where bread just goes flying and we all yell breads up. Anyways, that's probably one of my favorite strange Lindsey Sterling tour traditions. Yeah, I take it, run with it. Thanksgiving, rolls up. Actually, you didn't hear that from me. All right, last question. Yeah, Tiffany. Oh, like you, okay. A violinist starting out their career. I mean, I think the best advice is the advice that can actually apply to anyone, where it's just like, keep going. I honestly think that this industry of entertainment, and even, I guess anything in life, it usually comes down to who's just willing to not take no for an answer. Who's willing to just keep on going when everybody else would have given up. There's this great book I just finished. It's actually called Think and Grow Rich. The title is the worst title ever because it's not actually about money. It's about